Hey guys, Vinnie Mirchandani. Real pleasure to have Jason Blessing here today. He's president and CEO of Model N, which provides revenue management software to a whole bunch of industries. I'll let Jason explain them all. And Jason also answer, most of us have been quarantined. You get around with your drone. So tell us a little bit about that too as you're introducing yourself.
Sure. Well, it's great to be here with you today, Vinny. So I'll start quickly with Model N. And, the way I always describe Model N to people is at least pre-COVID-19, if you picked up a copy of the business news, there would be two stories in the news almost every day. One was the cost of healthcare, the cost of pharmaceuticals globally, and then a lot of information about trade and high tech and trade with China in particular. And so we're ultimately the software, the commercial system of record inside of the life sciences and the high tech companies that you see in the headlines. And we help them simplify and rationalize all the complexity and the regulations around those two industries. Those are the two primary industries that we focus on. And then, a little bit about me. So I've been in enterprise software for 25 years. I actually moved out to California for a girlfriend and a job at PeopleSoft 25 years ago. And the PeopleSoft thing worked out pretty well. And the girlfriend thing worked out pretty well also. She's my wife. We have 16-year-old triplets and live here in the Bay Area. And then, you asked specifically about my drone. So I've always been a photography buff, and I also like to do a lot of things outside, cycling, kayaking, hiking, and that has intersected over the years with photography. And in particular, the drone has just been such an interesting thing for photographers because it's just given us a completely new way to compose pictures of all these things we've been taking pictures of over the years with, originally 35 millimeter cameras, then iPhones, and now this is just a completely new perspective. And drones are also incredibly portable now. So I have a small one from DJI that I literally throw in my backpack almost any time I leave, whether it's going out for a hike or going to visit my team in India. And if the moment inspires me, I'll pull it out and put it up in the air and take some pictures. Well,
maybe you can rejig it to run Zoom meetings from there.
Well, actually, this background here that I have for Zoom was actually taken from one of my drones. So I've brought it into my Zoom meetings as well.
Well, Jason, good to see you smiling and boisterous as ever. Hey, let's turn a little serious. So we've seen all kinds of heroics, right, in the last 3 months. Healthcare heroics, obviously your old turf, manufacturing, auto companies jumping in to make medical ventilators, banks doing 4 million PPP loans, last mile logistics, unbelievable, last mile logistics, and so on. Your two industries have had a fair share of heroics, right? Tell us about some of your customers. I mean, you've had a front row seat almost watching some of this.
Yeah, front row seat is a great way to describe it. And I think, it's inspiring in a time like this where you see how some of these companies, really respond and rise to the occasion. And certainly with the two verticals that we serve, that's been the case. We actually just talked about this recently on an internal town hall at the company at Model N. And I shared some statistics with the team. And one of the statistics I shared is that 24 of our top 25 customers in terms of revenue are working on some form of life-saving product related to the coronavirus pandemic. And it really spans a wide range of products. And so we've got the biopharma companies working on COVID-19 vaccines. So we've got Johnson & Johnson as a customer, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, GSK, Sanofi. All of these are examples of customers of ours that have vaccines in late stage trials. And so it's pretty unique to turn on the news at night and see our customers featured. We've also got customers like Gilead, Novartis, Takeda, They're examples of customers that are working on therapies to help sick patients recover more quickly, and ideally, burden the healthcare system less and lower mortality rates. Takeda is one that probably is a company a lot of people haven't heard of before, but they're the company and the technology behind antibody transfusions, which are obviously getting a lot of attention right now. We've also got customers like Monlinka. They manufacture PPE. Stryker's a customer. They make most of the things that, as a patient or a medical professional, that you would use in an ICU. And then customers like Abbott, also been in the news quite a bit, working on testing capabilities. And so those are all customers in life sciences that have literally aimed all of their resources at solving this pandemic, or at least mitigating the effects of it. And then, as you mentioned, my background also comes with a little bit of manufacturing, and we also at Model N sell to high-tech manufacturers. And we have a great customer called Microchip Technology, diversified manufacturer of electronic components. Again, many people probably haven't heard of Microchip, but they make a lot of the electronic controllers that go into everything from the cars we drive to the appliances in our kitchen. But they are also an example of one of the companies that's pivoted and has designed a controller that can go into ventilators now. So while some parts of their business may be down, this is a huge growth area for them, and really driving their business. And I have to say, it's also been incredibly rewarding to partner with these companies and, again, really be their commercial system of record. And the thing that stands out to me is the employees of these companies, the amount of pride that they have, and how purpose-driven, particularly the life sciences companies, how purpose-driven they are, is inspiring. And it's absolutely rewarding to work with such a great group of people who are working on solving such important problems, and for Model N to be a small part of it is definitely a lot of fun.
Now, Jason, the science fiction writer William Gibson said a long time ago, he said, the future is already here, it's just very unevenly distributed. That's probably the best description of today, right? Anil Butchry, the CEO of Workday, you know him from your PeopleSoft days, said he had run a 1 million-person payroll in the middle of the pandemic, single company, right? So, it's like they're going gangbusters. I talked to a local bank. His president said his loan volume grew 25% in 1 month, thanks to the PPP loans. On the other hand, I interviewed the CIO of Delta, and when I interviewed him, their capacity was down to 5%, right? So it's like feast of famine. Are you finding some of your customers are downscaling and using your tools somewhat differently, revenue management, but in new markets or scaling down markets?
Yeah, wow, I just had a moment there as you were describing that, thinking I've only been on a plane once this year. And it's been a long time since I've seen the inside of a Delta plane or a United plane, which I suppose is good and bad. So yeah, we're fortunate, Vinnie, at Model N, in that with the focus on life sciences and high tech and the resiliency of these two verticals, I tend to see more of the companies that are growing and on an upswing versus, those that are in the dumps, so to speak. But I'll share an example of a customer with you that is using our technology that's going gangbusters. It's another company that I don't know how many people have heard of, called Securus. And Securus is arguably one of the most important companies right now in life sciences, because they're one of two major providers for influenza vaccines. And everyone's talking about how this fall is going to be a really important flu season, and talking about the need to make sure people are vaccinated so that influenza doesn't have this compounding effect with coronavirus. And so Securus actually is a customer or a prospect who came to us at the end of last calendar year and saw that this demand, as we got into 2020 and the fall of 2020 in particular, demand for their products was going to outstrip their ability to price, distribute, and sell them. And so they came to Model N to help them shore up their commercial systems, their revenue management systems, and became a customer. Back in March, we talked about this on our earnings call. And aside from the fact that their products are gonna help mitigate the effect of influenza this fall, it was interesting to me because they were a new logo deal that we signed where the majority of the final negotiation and signature happened remotely. And we kicked off their project about 45 days ago. It's maybe been a little bit longer right now, virtually. And the current plan is to run this entire project 100% virtually, where we will never physically be in a room with the customer, never physically be in a conference room with the customer. So from kickoff all the way through to deployment and post-production support, this will be 100% virtual. It's going to be a fairly quick project using our accelerated methodology. They'll go live in about 22, 23 weeks, all with the goal of having the infrastructure of this company ready to support, influenza season or getting people vaccinated as we get into the September and October timeframe. So, again, kind of an interesting story, I think, because it's an example of a company who's doing well in this environment. And then it's also an example for us where we've had to completely shift how we sell and how we deliver our products to accommodate the reality that we're in today. And again, there's also a higher calling here of making sure that this product gets to market and people are healthy.
I'm glad that you don't have too many on the downscaling side. So good for you. Let's turn a little bit to leadership. Clearly, you've had different roles over your career. So I'm on the advisory board of my business school's dean's advisory board. And, we had an advisory board a couple of weeks ago. I forgot to ask him. I said, I would have said, Dean, you taught me many, many things, but you didn't teach me to lead in a crisis like this, this wide, this deep. Jason, where do you get is it mentors? Is it your wife? Where do you get the peace and calm to lead in this crisis?
Yeah, well, I guess, flying my drone and riding my bike is one place where I get peace and quiet and think, that's for sure.
Hey, nobody's credited the drone, so you're first for that.
I'd say there's a few things that are kind of helping keep me grounded today and helping me recharge my batteries and continue to be inspired. The first is I'm spending more time now probably than ever with customers. The barrier to entry to spend time with a customer these days is much lower. No longer do we have to get on a plane and feel like, the pressure to get on a plane, go to, dinner, having more frequent, authentic, lower friction barrier to entry interactions with customers over Zoom. I've found that to be particularly energizing. I'll share a quick story with you. I was, like a lot of tech CEOs, I've always admired Mark Benioff, not just for what he's built, the business, but, his passion for, social responsibility and using his platform to get that message out. I don't always agree with everything Mark says, but I really admire him that he's literally trying to use his platform to make the world a better place in San Francisco, a better city. And I actually saw Mark interviewed, it was maybe 3-4 months ago on our local news. So not CNBC or any of these big fancy stations, our local ABC News station. And Mark was sitting in his, his Hawaiian shirt in his office at home, and he was talking about how he was going to make a commitment, or how he had made a commitment to his employees to not lay anyone off related to COVID-19. And I was inspired by that from Mark, because I think in this uncertain time, particularly 3 or 4 months ago, if you just think about people's basic needs, they're so worried about their own health and safety and their families. And to have your company kind of take away the concern of, do I have a job or not? I just thought was, again, a very noble thing from Mark that inspired me. And we actually happened to have a town hall the next day. at Model N. And so I came into work. I didn't even actually tell any of my ELT that I was going to do this, but I made the same pledge, the same commitment to my team. And where this kind of hooks into the question you asked is, I've really been inspired by how our employees have responded to that. And I think everyone took a moment to kind of inventory their own health and their family and their situation. And now because Model N has supported them, they're coming back and supporting the company in just an extraordinary way. And I think in some respects, people are, they're using work and the routine of work and the inspiration that you get from work as a way to, bring some level of normalcy in their life. And so I've just seen the level of engagement and the pace of play with our employees go up significantly at the company. And that has just continued to build on itself. And, there's a number of reasons why that's happening, but I can certainly kind of trace this initial commitment I made to the team back to the beginning of where we really seem to get momentum on this. And it's inspired me, and it's inspired me, almost every day that I've come into work and engaged with my team, and just seen them not let the current situation get in the way of our customer success and making Model N a great company.
It's been really good to see tech leaders, not just Mark. Anil's made something similar. I talked to Bob Stutz, who's at SAP, and he was all over commitment to employees. I mean, it's been good to see executives really support their teams. It's a tough time, people working from home with kids running around, and just good to see that empathy. Talking about Mark, he said something last week. I think it was a Freudian slip, but he said, I don't know if this is a pandemic or an epidemic. He goes, we've gone from a health crisis to a financial crisis to a diversity and, protest crisis. He goes, it is an epidemic. So he's a phenomenal guy. Put on your economist hat. And I don't want you to get in trouble with Wall Street, but what do you see? I mean, you're an optimist. What do you see? A V recovery? It doesn't sound like you've gone into a decline at all. You've kept going. But what do you see for the economy? A V recovery, kind of a slower U recovery, a W kind of up and down, or an L? It's going to be dead for a while.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked this question. I was an econ minor at University of Michigan, so I can maybe feel like I get a little bit of mileage out of that degree now. As I think about my own company, as I said, I think we're fortunate in that we serve two resilient end markets. But that said, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw something that looked more like a W. I mean, today, if you look at the graphs, it's a V. The market has, bounded back. I don't know if it's exactly to, pre COVID-19 levels across the board, but it's close. But I think one of the things that worries me today is that, there's still a lot of volatility in the market. The market tends to react, and I think in a lot of cases overreact to some of the news that's out there. But, I still think we've got to fully digest and move this massive unemployment issue that we have through the system and get people back to work and comfortable spending money, particularly on discretionary things. And so I think, unemployment is something that I continue to watch very closely. And then I don't think we're out of the woods yet on really understanding, where we're at, the spread of the virus and some of the infection rates. So, I've continued to watch infection rates and hospitalization rates and watching for a scenario where we were back at the beginning of this, where healthcare systems, particularly in the Northeast, got overburdened. And so I think if we find ourselves in a situation where unemployment doesn't get rectified sooner rather than later, and the virus doesn't show containment and reduction of hospitalization rates, I think that the market could and probably will react negatively to that, which would be that other dip in the V to form a W. So, that's my best guess. We're not out of the woods yet, but I know that's the $1 million question everyone's trying to answer.
Well, listen, you're optimistic than a few other people that I've talked to. So, all reasonable points. Jason, what else would you like to share with your peers? I mean, you always, you've had, like you said, 25 years in software. What would you share with your peers?
The final thing I would offer is, as you mentioned, Vinnie, I tend to be an optimist. I'm a glass half full guy, and so I certainly know for me, I'm looking for the opportunity in this chaos that exists today and all this uncertainty. And I think one of the things I've found myself reflecting on and even sharing with my management team at Model N and our company is back to what I went through in 2008 during the 2008 recession. So I was at the time I was an executive at an HR software company called Taleo. And, we got hit very hard by that recession as an HR provider focused on hiring in financial services, among other industries. But I think back and I think about the leadership that Mike Gregoire, who was our CEO at the time, provided. And Mike kept us all focused on the horizon, not the here and now. And we continued to invest at Taleo. We built new products, a couple of new products during that downturn. We continued to invest in our sales capacity. We continued to turn the wrenches on operational excellence projects at the company. And we really accelerated out of the recovery. And our shareholders benefited from that. I think we bottomed out somewhere in the high single digits in terms of the stock price in 2008, early 2009, and then over the recovery period, the next 18 months, our stock went from single digits up to the mid 40s and ultimately ended in a successful sale of the company to Oracle. So I've continued to remind again my team and my company that you got to look for the opportunity in these situations, and it's a great opportunity to continue to invest and build for a stronger company that's ready to accelerate out of the recovery.
Jason, thank you so much for your time.